as Lana mentioned, am the Member of Parliament for Nanaimo-Ladysmith, and honored to be here today on the traditional territories of the Nanaimo First Nations. And we're here, as you can see by the big sign behind us, in Nanaimo at the beautiful Swayalana Park. So I'm just a great place for us to be today. And I'm here today with the NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh and incredible constituents in the riding of Nanaimo-Ladysmith. We have Tiana and we have Shay. And today, I was honored to have Jagmeet here because we know we're all seeing the impacts all around us of an increasing cost of living. Housing prices have gone up, the cost of groceries has gone up, and more people are struggling to make ends meet. This means that people who are doing all the right things are struggling to keep food on the table. Hearing from Tiana and Shay today, hearing from Shay about trying to feed her 18-month-old daughter. This is a time where we know it's essential that our children get the food and nutrition that they need to set them up for success for the rest of their lives. And trying to access that nutritional food should not be in question. It should be available and accessible. Talking to Tiana about trying to feed her 2 teenage children. I'm also a mother of a young adult and a teenager. We know very well how much teenagers and young adults eat. Now it is more and more challenging to be able to keep food on the table. I'm hearing from seniors as well who have contributed to our communities in endless ways for generations and are now struggling to be able to access the food that they need to be able to maintain their health. And so with all of this happening, it was essential that we have Jagmeet Singh here today to be able to hear from families, to be able to hear from people in our communities around the impacts of what's happening and to talk about real solutions. We do have choices. We don't need to keep struggling to access the food that we need and to keep a roof over our heads. And so I'm honored to have Jagmeet here to be able to talk with you all and to be able to hear about those solutions. And with that, I will pass it over to Jagmeet Singh. Thank you. Thank you.
I want to thank Lisa Marie as the local member of parliament here for Nanaimo-Ladysmith for all her hard work, and really thank Shay and Tiana. Their stories are the stories of so many Canadians. The fact that Shay's got to make tough decisions about how she can feed her daughter, her 18-month-old child, how she can make sure that she gets good nutrition, and the sacrifices that both Shay and her partner have to make sure her kid, their kid has the food that they need. And Tiana's story around having to feed 2 teenagers, both Shay and Tiana have good jobs, their partners have good jobs. And despite having good jobs, they are feeling so squeezed by the cost of everything going up, but particularly groceries. And when talking about that, they thought, what would it be like for someone who wasn't earning a good wage or someone who wasn't earning the type of 2 partner salaries that they had for people that are working multiple minimum wage jobs? It is so tough right now for people to be able to afford their groceries. And we've got Justin Trudeau, who's really out of touch, and the Liberals are out of touch when it comes to this. They're not focused on the fact that corporate greed, 3 CEOs run the majority of grocery stores, and they're making massive profits while people are struggling. And Justin Trudeau's not really concerned about that, is out of touch. And then we've got the Conservatives who are not going to do anything about this. They're happy to see corporations making record profits while paying their workers low wages. They've got no concerns about that. No, they're not going to tackle the corporate greed. And so we're really the only party that's really giving people hope that we can do better. We can tackle corporate greed, that we can do more to give people a shot at being able to put food on the table. And I remember what that's like. I was thinking and talking with Shane Tiana about when I was a kid, when I was 20, taking care of my 15-year-old brother. And I was going to university and trying to keep food on the table for my brother. And I had to work 3 jobs. I remember struggling. And I don't want anyone to have to struggle just to put food on the table. So we've got a plan to tackle the corporate greed. First of all, we know that in Canada, we don't have strong enough competition laws. We need more competition. We need to bring in more, we need to support independent local grocers for more competition. We are the ones that actually did an investigation into food prices. And the Competition Bureau found conclusively that the large corporate grocery stores have increased their margins, are making more profit than ever before. We found that to be true. We called the CEOs of these large grocery stores to committee. I questioned them directly, And folks might recall when I asked Mr. Weston, how much profit is enough? And he had no answer, because there's no limit to how much profit they would make. And that's where government's got to step up and protect people. So we need stronger competition laws. We need to encourage more competition. We need to protect consumers better. We need stronger laws that if a company is engaged in any sort of behavior that exploits consumers, there needs to be stiff penalties. We know that in Canada, price fixing happened with the cost of bread, and there was no real penalties on these companies. They were able to get away with doing that with really little penalty. We need to see stiffer penalties to end any of those behaviors which exploit consumers. And then what we need to do is put in place an excess profit tax on companies that are exploiting people, like those large grocery stores, and make sure that we use that revenue to give people a break, to help people out with their groceries, like we did with doubling the GST rebate, putting more money in people's pockets. We need more measures like that, where we use the revenue from the excess profits of these corporations and put that back into the pockets of people so they can afford their groceries. There are steps we can take. There are solutions we can take. You Democrats have the courage to do it. Donc, j'ai parlé avec ces familles pour mieux comprendre les enjeux ici dans ces circonscriptions. Ils ont partagé comment c'est difficile à rejoindre les débuts, particulièrement pour acheter les épiceries. Donc, on sait qu'avec les libéraux, ils sont déconnectés avec la réalité des gens, et les conservateurs n'ont pas le courage de faire face à la cupidité des grandes entreprises. Nous sommes le seul parti qui dit clairement qu'on doit faire face à la cupidité des grandes entreprises. On doit mettre en œuvre une taxe sur les profits excessifs des grandes entreprises. On doit avoir plus de protection pour les consommateurs. On doit défendre les gens pour qu'ils puissent acheter les épiceries. On peut le faire. Les conservateurs et les libéraux n'ont pas le courage, sont déconnectés et sont à l'aise avec ce qui se passe. Nous, les néo-démocrates, sommes prêts de faire ce qu'il faut pour défendre les gens et pour rendre la vie plus abordable. With that, I'm ready for any questions you might have. Again, I want to give a big thank you to Shay and Tiana, and of course, our local MP, Lisa Marie.
Okay, we're going to start with questions on site. We'll do one question, one follow-up. Let's start with CHLY Nanaimo here first.
Sounds good.
Hi, Mr. Singh.
Hey there.
Historically, the margins in groceries are quite low for that business. Like, is there a level that you would set it at? Like, what percentage of the profits is too much?
Well, what we've found so far is that at a time when Canadians are having the most difficulty ever buying groceries, the fact that grocery stores have chosen that time to increase their margins is evidence of greed. That is wrong. When their profits are record-breaking, literally record-breaking profits, at a time when people can't afford groceries, that's wrong. And so there's lots of ways to put in place an excess profit tax. We've looked at other countries that have done so. Just to give an example, the United Kingdom, Germany, Spain have all put in place some form of excess profit tax on certain sectors that are making record profits. We could look at the way they've done it and find the best tool that works in Canada. But the fact remains, we must put in place some limit on the greed of these corporations, because they're going to continue to make more and more profit while people are struggling to buy their groceries. And no one else is willing to talk about it. But we are, and there are solutions. We can look at what other countries have done, and we can come up with a plan that works in Canada.
Go for a follow-up.
Yeah. This riding specifically, Nanaimo-Ladysmith, has been quite competitive in the past elections. I'm just curious, like, why should voters support the NDP opposed to, say, government, like let's say the Conservatives, who might actually form government, and they would have a member of parliament inside the government?
Well, let's look at over the past number of years what New Democrats have done and what Conservatives have done. When we look at the fact that people were struggling with the cost of groceries, New Democrats forced the government to double the GST rebate, putting more money in people's pockets. We made that happen. For some families over 2 years, that's over $1,000 back in their pockets. We made that happen. We were the only ones calling on the corporate greed of these grocery stores, called them to committee, investigated the price of groceries. So if you care about grocery prices, New Democrats are the ones that are fighting to make sure your prices are more affordable. We're fighting for real solutions. We've got the Competition Bureau that's come forward with real solutions because we forced them to investigate what's going on. When it comes to the cost of living, New Democrats forced this government to deliver dental care for children under 12. That's something that saves families money and improves their health. That's already now available for hundreds of thousands of kids across the country, thousands of people here on Vancouver Island. We made that happen. And by the end of this year, for families that are worried about the cost of dental care, Free dental care for seniors, children 18 and under, and people living with disabilities is going to happen because New Democrats forced them to do that. On the other side, what have conservatives done? What can they point to in two minority governments? Anything concrete that they've done to make your life better, to give you a break, to lower your cost of living, to help your family in any concrete way? I can help you with the answer. Nothing. They've not done anything to make people's lives better. So if you want someone on your side to deal with the challenges that we're up against, whether it's the cost of groceries, whether it's the cost of housing, New Democrats are the only ones who are really focused on working people, on everyday families, making sure they can get by. If you want someone that's going to focus on the super rich, well, conservatives always focus on the super rich. If you want the things to stay the way they are, liberals want things to stay just the way they are. We're the only ones really pushing for change that's going to make life better for everyday families.
We're going to go to CBC Nanaimo next.
Yeah, Claire Palmer, CBC. So obviously the cost of living is a nationwide problem. So what went into the decision to have this conversation and have this press conference in Nanaimo today?
Well, we know from Lisa Marie's work here in Nanaimo-Ladysmith that the cost of living was a major concern here in the riding. It's a major concern on Vancouver Island. Frankly, it's a big concern across the country. So we really wanted to talk about an issue that matters to people and talk about real solutions. You'll find that we're not trying to chase different issues. We're actually focused on what people are talking about. And we're focused on talking to real people about those concerns. And that's why we spoke with Shay and Tiana, whose stories really are the stories of a lot of Canadians and a lot of people of Nanaimo-Ladysmith. The fact that Shay is working, or her and her partner are working good jobs, and they've got a young one at home and are struggling to be able to give her good, nutritious food. The fact that Tiana, her and her partner are also working good jobs, have a good living, but are struggling with the cost of their groceries, the cost of feeding two teenage kids. Mentioned that the cost of their groceries are now double the cost of their mortgage. That is a very serious problem. And so for us, we're always focused on what real people are going through and then real solutions to give people hope. And that's why we're saying we can take on the greed of these corporations. We can actually make life more affordable. There are solutions, and that's why we put those forward. But we want people to know we're listening to you, we hear you, and we're coming up with real solutions to address the problems that are actually happening in your life to give people real hope.
You have a follow-up?
Yeah, just in your time in Nanaimo, is there anything that has particularly struck out to you as cost of living issues in this community?
I would say the two biggest concerns that I keep on hearing about are groceries and housing. Those are the two biggest concerns when it comes to the cost of living. And we're hearing that it wasn't that way just not maybe 10 years ago. And over the past 10 years, things have really gotten a lot worse. Frankly, over the time period of both conservatives and liberals, things have gotten consistently worse and worse. And things aren't going to get better unless we take real bold decisions. And that's why we're talking about taxing the excess profit of these large corporate grocery stores, using that revenue to give people a break when it comes to the cost of their groceries. That's why we're talking about more transparency, more accountability for these large corporate grocery stores, and why we're talking about real measures to build homes that are actually affordable. So we're focused on the real matters that people are raising. People have talked about housing and groceries as big concerns, and that's what we're addressing. Thanks so much.
We'll move to questions on the Zoom. Everyone will get one question and one follow-up. Please use the raise hand function if you have a question. Our first question comes from Robert Betham with CTV. Go ahead, please, Robert.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, gotcha.
Good. Thanks for taking my question. I guess my first question relates to the fact that Vancouver Island has amongst, if not the highest grocery expenses of anywhere in British Columbia. Does your plan involve anything that would address that, as it flows from transportation costs? And as a second part of that first question, I'm just wondering about, in concrete terms, what would you propose to do to encourage more competition?
I'll start with your second question first. What we heard from the Competition Bureau after the investigation we launched into food prices was, one, that the profit margins of the large corporate grocery stores did go up. So they are using a period in time when Canadians are struggling the most to increase their margins. That's wrong. And they also recommended increasing competition. And in their recommendation, they talked about a number of areas to increase competition. We really want to focus on supporting local independent grocery stores as one of the areas where we can increase competition, give people better choices when it comes to prices for groceries. That's something we can do. We can look at incentives and supports to encourage and to support more local independent grocery stores. That's one concrete thing. When it comes to the cost of groceries, that are high across the country, and they're particularly high in some regions. When we bring down the price and the cost it's going to disproportionately help those areas where they're experiencing already high prices. So our plan is going to disproportionately help places like Vancouver Island. And that's why we're talking about putting in place more protection for consumers, putting in place that excess profit tax so that companies that are gouging Canadians will have to pay more, and we can use that revenue to give people a break when it comes to the cost of their groceries through things like increasing the GST rebate or other means of putting money back in people's pockets so they can afford their groceries. But there are solutions out there, and I want folks to know that there are real solutions, but it means we've got to identify the real problem. If corporate greed is driving up the cost of living, then we've got to address corporate greed. And the evidence is clear. These large corporate grocery stores and their CEOs are using inflation as cover to increase the cost of your groceries. We're the only ones that are actually willing to call that out, and we're laying out a real plan to tackle it.
By way of a second question, I'm just wondering, polls out last week showed that Pierre Poilievre had made some headway, and he was doing very well in his party in terms of polling. A lot of that hay seemed to be made highlighting the high cost of housing. I'm wondering if the fact that you are here in a traditional NDP stronghold and have spent a fair bit of time criticizing the Conservatives today reflects a concern that you have that indeed the Conservatives are looking very strong heading into the next election.
Well, I first want to focus on the fact that we are in this housing crisis because of two parties that have been in power. In the recent years, the crisis that we're in wasn't something that happened overnight. It happened over years. And the two governments that were in power most recently were Conservative and Liberal. And so I absolutely blame the inaction of Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister on the fact that we're dealing with high cost of housing. But I also want to point out that Pierre Poilievre was a key cabinet minister under the Harper government, and they did not deliver affordable housing. They didn't build any affordable housing projects. They didn't build housing that people could actually afford to buy or to rent. They did not deliver on projects. And so neither of those governments can respond, or they don't have a track record to say that they've responded to the problem. And if you listen to what Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre are saying, they're saying just do more of the same thing. More of the same means that families cannot afford that rent. More of the same housing being built means that families can't afford to buy that. We need to do something differently. We need to build things that people can actually afford. And I'm the only leader talking about building homes that are actually affordable, because we know that we continue to see the same building going on. It's not affordable for families. That's not going to actually solve the problem. We need homes that are truly affordable to buy and homes that are truly affordable to rent. And that's what we're focused on. And I'm not concerned about the Conservatives or the Liberals. I'm concerned about making sure people get real solutions. And that's why I'm focused on pointing out the mistakes they've made so we can actually have real solutions that make people's lives better.
We're not seeing other questions on the Zoom. So Jagmeet, I will turn it back to you for closing remarks.
Thanks so much. Again, I just want to thank our local MP, Lisa Marie Barron, for her work and her advocacy, and of course, Shay and Tiana for sharing their stories. Your stories really capture the stories of a lot of people that are finding it so hard to afford their groceries with all the other costs of living. And I want folks to know that there are solutions. New Democrats are fighting for those solutions to give you and your family a shot at building a good life. So thanks so much. Really appreciate you both. And thanks to the media for being here. Thanks, merci. So, yeah.